All right, so welcome back into the live stream today. I think a lot of you, of course, are here for the big news, and that is Bitcoin getting ready to do a super pump? We'll find out today. I think there's a lot of things leaning in on that, so we'll break down some sentiment, give you guys some latest news, and dive into a few altcoins too to kind of break the monotony since this is such a dull market right now. My name is Paul Arrow, and welcome back to Tech Path. All right, let's get into it today. Let's talk about Bitcoin, of course, and one of the things to really talk about is what's causing the pump. Many people have said, well, you know, there's a lot of things happening, Paul. There's many things happening from a financial, institutional side. There's stuff happening from price action. Obviously, we see the sentiment side of things all playing into this. Some of the stories that I'll show today, I think kind of paint a certain story that is starting to occur around cryptocurrency in general. Obviously, Bitcoin being the alpha dog in the hunt here will most likely lead the narrative throughout the next few, maybe the next few months, even though I do see some windows here that we want to keep a very close attention to. So we'll continue to track this pretty closely. Grayscale threatens legal action if SEC rejects Bitcoin ETF conversion bid. This to me is probably one of the big factors I believe is that we are seeing some indicators right now that we will see an ETF this year. A lot of people kind of pushed away from an ETF. I still believe that an ETF is one of the gateways and will be the on-ramp for a lot more conversion of people from traditional finance into cryptocurrencies. And in general, remember, right now, it's a lot of you and I have been drinking the Kool-Aid. If you're new to our channel, maybe this is the first time you've had a chance to understand this, but what you have to realize is we have over 300,000 subscribers on this channel, all of which pretty much have been around in Bitcoin and in cryptocurrency, maybe all the way back to 2017. So to me, this starts to paint a different picture and maybe a new layer of adoption that could be coming. Even though we did see a lot of adoption in 2020 and 2021, I think that will be dwarfed by what we're going to see in the coming years. So Grayscale is not ruling out seeking legal action against the SEC. If the SEC continues to prohibit the launch of the spot currency, the ETF, this of course coming over from their CEO, I think all options are on the table. This was during an interview on Bloomberg. This was a little bit of a throwing down the gauntlet, but I think this in essence is maybe a lot of companies that are looking at what the SEC has been doing and kind of bumbling, I should say, the situation with the XRP and the Ripple case. They've really kind of put themselves in a bad position, at least right now on the forefront of what you look at. And I think a lot of people are trying to take a look at this and say, wait a minute, maybe we need to go in and challenge the SEC because this is the time. We're also seeing some opportunities around the globe where we're starting to see the unification of a lot of people looking at cryptocurrencies as an alternative when they are concerned about maybe their governments. So there's so many factors that are playing into this that point into this direction. SkyBridge Capital CEO Anthony Scaramucci is predicting both the 2024 presidential candidates will be pro-crypto. And again, I've talked about this on the show before. I think a lot of people kind of laughed at what I was saying, but you know, last year we were really kind of pushing toward the fact that we would see the next real political games being played in the crypto landscape. And just because of the fact that we are, remember, you're dealing with highly affluent individuals that have usually good, significant connections into the political arenas. Then you're dealing with the rising stars of our economy, both in the millennial class and also in some of the Gen X's that have started to realize extreme wealth because of cryptocurrencies, who've also got a good tie into the political circles. With all of that, just remember, it just takes a few people to really kind of start to sway how this might look. But if you look at where this might push the future of both infrastructures, everything from infrastructure bills to cryptocurrency alignment to possibly a CBDC, all of this could be really in the cards as we start to see some pretty advanced, I think, advanced moves in the political landscape. And of course, Scaramucci is one that I think, obviously, you know, he's seen the swamp before, so he understands what is out there and what needs to be done in DC to really kind of make this work. I would love to get him on the show because I have so many questions around how this might look in, say, 24 months when we are into a new presidential cycle, what this market might really look like at that period of time, because there's going to be so much adoption. And then you've got the political landscape that will bring a new showcase to this whole situation in a new way. Just imagine, crypto market now touching over 2 trillion as the investors are turning a little bit greedy. I think a lot of people probably made some money over the weekend if you're depending on some of the altcoins that you've been in. I mean, we've been tracking altcoins for many months. Last week and the week before, we had some very good signals on many alt projects that are in our CPI. Make sure and check out the Crypto Power Index. That's something we've been working on for years. We've implemented a technology that we use to basically track sentiment and amplification data. I'm going to show you some of that. This particular data point that we've been tracking on Bitcoin really since early last year, this is flashed its first signal that we have not seen since Bitcoin hit its all-time high back in November. So this is a huge, to me, when I look at sentiment data and how amplification applies to it, this is one of the biggest signals that we have seen so far. So stick around for that. I'll show you that towards the end of the video and dive into it. But jumping over to the fear and greed, this is another one that, of course, everybody kind of looks to. And I think the fact that we are seeing this quickly of a movement toward a positive sentiment, and again, this is something that we've kind of been indicating for a few weeks, and I'll show you this in charts, because we do a 12-week running historical data analysis on top crypto projects. Right now we have 15 of the top crypto projects that we track. Then we track another 150 of the bigger coins and altcoins. Then we go into the metaverse, we go into gaming. So overall, we're tracking about 400 overall projects out of the 7,000 that we pull data on, and then we sift those out and try to give you guys kind of the best look. But if you look at fear and greed, jumping in here from what has been very low to now a very neutral position, getting ready to go into a potential positive. If you look just where it's been over the past couple of weeks, 1 week ago at 38, 1 month ago at a 33, versus a year ago at 55. So let's see if we can do an update on this. And where is it today? Still moving up. Now it's at 49. All right, cool. All right. All right, so let's take a look at, I think the guys were pointing out that that was a different chart, right? Yeah, all right, so we'll pull it up. But I want to get into some of the other stories here. One, of course, is going to get into the short traders that got essentially wrecked on the short end of the stick as Bitcoin obviously broke 47K. We started to see this kind of move into the space, and I think the scenario here as we look at this, and we probably should get Evan Aldo back in the studio to take a look at this, because sometimes what his analysis, especially on the longs and also on shorts, of taking a look at where the money flow can look like over a short period of time. We'll probably do this toward the end of the week. I feel like Bitcoin and Ethereum both will be in a good position to take a really good look at where that is going and kind of take a look at maybe where that is happening. I was looking over at Willy Woo's most recent. This was an interesting statement too from Willy. Bitcoin obviously eyeing now 61,000. He has kind of pushed it into the fact that we are in a really into bull market territory again. So to me, I like what Willy Woo has talked about over the years. I mean, we followed him, and I love his analytics, and I think he looks at on-chain data in a different way than a lot of people look at it. And I think in the fact that he's looking in this direction, that we are seeing potentially some very bull signs here, is a huge direction that some of these analysts have kind of been pointing to for sure. This is something that he talks about here as per data from CoinGlass. Over 558 million has been liquidated across cryptocurrencies, 88,000 short traders being liquidated the last 24. That's 170 million in Bitcoin has been forced to exit its positions in the same period. So that is one of the largest liquidation orders. Went down on BitMEX. That was 10 million in XBD USD. So again, back to the point of this pattern is definitely showing some very interesting signs. Peter Brandt kind of talked about this. He's been calling out kind of plan B over the months, and he's also kind of pointing in the same direction as many are, is that this ascending triangle is really going. Now that's if you like TA and maybe understand it to the point of what it might look like. I think TA, and I would love to get you guys' input on this, is when you look at TA, are you looking at long-term? Are you looking at short-term trades? How do you use it? Are you using something like a market cipher, things of that nature? I think the scenario that we look at when I look at TA, this is usually going to be with something like a market cipher where we are looking at money flow, because really money flow is going to be the big one that we look at in comparison, because that's usually driven from what's happening in the sentiment side of thing. All right, let me pull up the fear and greed now because I had the wrong one there for you guys. So now, greed. All right, so you've got it on fear and greed at 60, 49 yesterday. Last week was 30. I knew that was different. And then last month was 26. So definitely way into the green right now. And I think we'll see another update here in another 4 hours. So we'll see how that goes. Before we get into some of the charts and kind of diving into this, of course, I want to thank our sponsors, FTX. FTX is one of those crypto exchanges I think that you just can't do without. One, because of the cost in per trade. It's one of the best, I think, overall in terms of value. And if you look at just their services that they're offering on their platform right now, the mobile app is absolutely superior. The other thing that I look at is just as some of these projects and these exchanges really tie into these, I look at the teams they're starting to build around it. And you can kind of see what they're doing right here with Steph Curry, the Bradys. You've got, of course, Mr. Wonderful in there, KD, all sorts of people that are really kind of flowing into the space. And I think this is another thing that we are seeing across a lot of different factors within the crypto exchanges themselves, because the key thing here is the amount of people that are going to first look to cryptocurrencies, maybe for the first time, and they're trying to figure out, because they have trusted not only sponsors, but you look at the trusted connections they've got in some of these celebrities that are really tying into this. I think that is a big factor in being able to kind of go to the next level. So lots happening there for sure. All right, so I want to tie into this deal on Coinbase, because I felt like this was very interesting here. Coinbase now attempting to stop the increase of surveillance from the EU regulators. The EU regulators, of course, have been talking about trying to secure some of the off-chain, or not really off-chain, but off-exchange wallets. And what this boils down to is essentially your MetaMask or other exchanges that are not. And the idea behind this from an EU regulator standpoint is they're trying to look at this as a way to essentially thwart money laundering. And I think a lot of people have been looking at this as an issue. One of the things that Coinbase basically said, this was their legal officer, he says, like similar regulations proposed by another parliament around the world, some lawmakers believe that cryptocurrencies are used primarily as a way to bypass AML. And in addition, he explained to EU government officials, there's no tools to track crypto transaction. And then blam, he just says, wait a minute, fiat is really the big, when you think about money laundering, fiat, because of the fact that it is pretty much untraceable, is literally the one that is harder to track here than any. And of course, digital assets, leverage, blockchain, digital ledger tech, all of this is going in the direction of mass adoption. This is something that I'm still a little bit perplexed about, because some of these, not only very smart people in a lot of these political arenas, I don't understand how they cannot understand really what's happening over here in the blockchain side of things. In reality, I think this takes away to a certain amount some privacy from the aspect of blockchain. Sure, there's privacy within it, but the transaction layer is locked in the chain, and the ability for countries, nation states, et cetera, to really have access to that is pretty much wide open. If you want to create a glass node or some sort of analytical tool, eventually at some point, imagine if your wallets are at some point registered like a social security number, that's when you're getting into a scenario where everything is going to be tracked into a potential master, whether it's a master database or some sort of API that would essentially connect to all the dots on that. Again, this goes back to the whole idea of where Web3 and blockchain is moving, and it is pretty much going to take over the planet. When you think about it, it just absolutely will blow up, where I think we're going to see overall adoption. One thing I did notice, and I was seeing a chart on this, I didn't bring the chart with me, but the amount of adoption that we've seen in cryptocurrency, especially in Bitcoin, if you compare where we are right now, it's similar to the internet in 1997. And the likelihood based on getting to the first billion the estimate based on current growth is somewhere around 2005, or around in comparison to the 2005 of the internet. So if you think about that huge leap between 1997 and 2005, the opportunity here of getting to 1 billion users is real. And again, that goes back to the whole point around mass adoption, ETFs hitting, the likelihood of getting out in front of a lot more personalities, celebrities, and then on the political arena, all of these things flowing into the space, because the big key here for Bitcoin to truly make it past the next layer of all-time high is going to be two things. And I truly believe adoption is still the driving force. Obviously, adoption is going to be fueled by what is happening in the market from a sentiment standpoint. The other aspect of this is, of course, this whole tie-in to Ethereum, which I believe will still be one of the key factors. Now, could Ethereum break away from Bitcoin when we see kind of this triple halvening or the full conversion into the new chain? I think this will be the factor that will really set Ethereum apart, or maybe forever tie it to Bitcoin's coattails. I feel like, though, we will see Ethereum start to see some breakaway velocity and do some interesting stuff. I was looking at the chart here, and before we get to that, I want to jump over to a poll real quick. All right, let's see what we got today. Over 50 Bitcoin in April. Okay, 81%. Man, you guys are definitely bullish it in. And then some of you, a couple of bears in the house today. All right, I can understand that. We have been pointing, and we like this direction. I'm still with you guys on this. And when I show you some of the charts here on where the CPI is pointing for Bitcoin, I think you're going to be very, very pleased. Let's jump to the chart here. Okay, so trading at 2.1 trillion, right there on the market cap, 121 billion in the man, good volume for the day. Of course, we've got dominance on Bitcoin at 42.1 and ETH at 18.9. And if you look at some of the charts, I mean, this has really been great to see over the past 10 days. Good green across all the big guys. And most of these really starting to flow. And I'll take a look at some of these. Man, Luna's up another 11 on today. Avalanche another 11, looking great. And there's even Shiba getting in the mix. And you've got a lot happening down the chart. And of course, I think a lot also within the areas of metaverse gaming. We're going to break down a lot of those too this week, so make sure and stay tuned on a lot of those. I want to jump over to Ethereum, and we'll take a quick look at Ethereum, because I know a lot of people have been kind of zooming in on where Ethereum is going. What will it look like in a short period of time? You can kind of see the jump over this last 7 days, and I want to show you guys the comparison that we pulled over here. And when you are, let's go over here to Ethereum, jump to that chart real quick. We're inside here. So you can kind of see the movement here that we've been tracking. When we saw the 3/7 date really was the point in which we started to see the positive sentiment move directly with. And if you kind of compare that into pricing, you can kind of see down here what we've had over the past few days, really seeing kind of a track towards Ethereum. And of course, the sentiment flying up the charts right now, actually over-indexing. Remember, Ethereum had been underperforming the overall market. Now it is overperforming. And the more important thing to me is this amplification number here at 74.92. This one to me is an important little number, because this is, if we start to see flips on amplification on any of these projects, as they get this tight, Ethereum right now, really bullish signals as we look forward. So lots happening there with Ethereum. I know, and I just want to show you the Bitcoin chart real quick, because this one is the one to me that really has just absolutely skyrocketed. This is the first time that we have seen amplification scoring over the sentiment for Bitcoin since November of last year. In fact, since its all-time high. So when you look at amplification and where it's happening on the overall charts, the amazing look at this at this level at 74.23, this is something that I think we'll continue to see going up the chart. So the question is can it hold? Will we get a chance to kind of see this really move in the next direction at this level? Because breaking 74 is a critical point that we have not seen since the fall of last year. And that is the big factor here. I think as we start to see amplification, that obviously affects sentiment. Sentiment is kind of a roll up into price action, and all of that starts to bleed in. And a lot of this will come into where whether it's institutional news or in the fact that we see other factors coming into it. What do you think Do Kwon and what's happening with Luna and his acquisition of so much Bitcoin? That in itself, some people still point kind of to that direction. I still believe that it's adoption and the potential for institutional still moving in. And this is something we've been talking about for over a year around institutional capital. I think the fact is we're just getting closer to that potential. So good news here, it's hit 74. Haven't seen that in a long time, so really, really good bullish signals. All right, let's take a look at Cardano, because this is the other one that people have been really kind of jumping on. You can kind of see the movement right here over the 7-day. Let's take a look at the month. Really some big jumps here. If you go back and look at our Cardano chart, let's take a look at ADA. And I think with ADA, it's been one that we've been monitoring for a while. And it had some signals along the way that were showing some highs back here at the end of February. We saw a little bit of movement. It dipped quite a bit, and then it has started stock. Now, it hasn't completely repositioned yet above 76, because it did hit 76 on amplification, which was a good signal back in last month. Now, the key here, I think that Cardano is still underperforming here based on sentiment and overall amplification. We could see this one continue to climb. So if it does, if you just look at the fast movement on Cardano, this is pretty insane for this to see this kind of movement right here, which gives me a lot more faith that we're going to see maybe something like what we saw back here in January, which was where it hit $1.48, $1.50. So Cardano, be on the watch for Cardano. Let's also take a look at Solana. Solana holding on strong. If you look at the 3-month, obviously it needs to pull out. Solana was and had been underperforming for a while. And let me pull up Solana real quick just to give you guys a quick look on Solana. As you can kind of see, a little bit flat, had not had some major performance. AMP was kind of up and down on Solana, and even though it was not necessarily moving in a big way, and then it had kind of a flat period, but it has seen some big moves here recently, and with amplification, you can kind of see right there, it's at 73.91. If it hits 74, that gets back into super bullish signals. 74 on a score of AMP is a very high score, and that starts to lead us into some very interesting places. In fact, I think I'll look back on the history of Solana. I think the last time we saw Solana hit the 74 on amplification was in the $150 to $170 range when it was pricing in like that. So good one there. Avalanche is the other one I wanted to take a look at quickly today. Lots happening there. Of course, Avalanche, if you saw this, a lot of downward movement, and then we saw flat, and then Avalanche kind of took off here over the last week. So again, good movement there. I'll pull the Avalanche chart for you guys to take just a quick look at Avalanche, and we'll get into it. We definitely want to get to the questions today, guys, so we'll go into some of those as well. Jump over to Avalanche, take a look. Now, still a little bit flat for me, even though it is trending up slightly. Avalanche could be getting ready to take another little run over the $100 mark based on the fact that they're indexing over 74 on their AMP score. So again, those are very bullish signs. But again, all of these altcoins have been flying over the past, really about the past week. Even if you had, if you look at projects like Zilliqa, we had Zilliqa on this weekend, which absolutely, I think it's still on, maybe still #1 on the overall chart for the week. So very interesting days indeed. We're going to get into a bunch of these. Let's jump over to questions and try to get to some of those today, guys. All right, Bitcoin just broke 48. Good news there coming in from Chichi. And I'm kind of curious, do you feel like the trend of getting to 50 quickly, and I think everybody kind of indicated that 50 is no problem. My question is, by end of April, do we see end of April being the end of that run, kind of the sell and may go away kind of theory that some analysts are looking at for the short term? I'd love to hear your feedback on that. Overkill. Love your vibes, content. What are you doing in the community? Can we please get your thoughts on Engine? We're going to be doing, actually, we have the Engine team coming on the show. I think it's next week. Love the project. I think Engine in general is just one of those metaverse projects that just needs a lot more notoriety. But everything that they're doing, still going in the right direction. I like that project very much. Sky Limitless. Paula, what are your top 3 metaverse picks right now in short-term potential? Okay, well, you'd have to lean in on Silica a little bit, even though they have pumped. That coin or token has doubled literally over the weekend. Can it hold with it coming up to their event here in Miami? I think it's coming up this weekend. Metapolis could be the big one there. I still like Mana as a potential hold. And then I think you have to go into, projects like Axie. Axie obviously is rolling in. But if you're thinking just metaverse only, I think I would still lean in on Mana. And then I'd go into the Rails projects, I think. I'd go into the Rails, take a look at some of those because there's just so many. I know Chris is talking about Render right here on fire, but there's many others. Arweave, another big metaverse. Obviously, data. You look at what's going to happen, I think, with Render. Yes, another one. There's just so many. And what I would recommend is check out our metaverse, some of our metaverse portfolio videos, because we really outlined some of those on the loose, and some of those back in the early days when we were investing in metaverse on some of our high-risk portfolios. We'll probably do some of that now coming up in the next week to 10 days because based on what we're seeing on sentiment for overall in metaverse, there are some things pumping, so we could be seeing some stuff coming our way real quick. B-Boy Ajax, will ETH surpass Bitcoin? I think at some point, yeah, we're gonna see a flipping occur. Now, could it happen on the merge? Could it happen when we see the triple flippening? The concept of the inflationary, deflationary aspect of where ETH is going, I think there's just too much pointing in the right direction, and they are making some achievements, which is another big factor for Ethereum. Do you see BTC going late, 75K late summer? Listen, I still am very bullish on Bitcoin based on what we're seeing on the overall sentiment right now. Remember, our sentiment is much shorter in terms of its time frame. We look at around a 7 to 10 day window, which gives us a bit of a lead time for pumps like what we're seeing right now. So hopefully some of you guys have been watching our show, bought ETH in the 24 to 26 range, and you're sitting there now, which we could see at 35 easily in the next day or two, and bought Bitcoin maybe around 40. Hopefully you bought some at 40 and you're sitting there at 48 right now. So again, good stuff for sure. Looks like Christina. Christina, let's go to you. Thoughts on XRP? Listen, we're going to have John Deaton on this week. If you don't know who John Deaton is, he is the attorney that basically is leading the class action lawsuit for the XRP investors against the SEC. And he also has been, obviously because of his expertise in that area, tracks exactly what's happening in the case itself. And I think he can also shed some light on where the potential is for this case. Could we see this happen if it comes off in April? If we get a settlement in April or May, listen, that timing is everything right now. Timing is everything. Huge. All right, Ricardo, Metapolis uses Unreal Engine. Just that puts it on higher. Yes, would agree. Yeah, we're going to see some pretty cool things coming from Zilliqa, so very cool stuff. All right, when is Illuvium game launched? I think it's quite a ways down, but they're doing a lot on staking. We have some new stuff coming out from Illuvium this week. We'll get to that. We're going to try to get to a video on Illuvium later this week. Might get Andrew on from Illuvium on the show to kind of explain it for you guys. We do a lot with them. And then AVAX saw Luna. Which one to go 200 first? I'm going to throw out there. Now, listen, Solana could retrace its numbers. It could retrace its numbers to 170. I don't know that Solana goes all the way because I'm in fear of a potential, scenario that may occur, whether we get a hack or something that happens on congestion with Solana. AVAX, on the other hand, a lot of blue sky, a lot of open water. They pretty much could turn on the gas. I don't know if they hit 200. If they go to 150, that would be a huge win for AVAX, setting at around 85, 90 right now. Obviously, if you been watching our channel, you bought AVAX around 15 or 20. Hopefully that's the case. CPI numbers suggest big moves for Solana. Yes, both Solana and ADA. CPI is pointing way up on both those projects right now. So for you Solana and ADA holders, you guys are in for a ride, I think. Blocktopia going to explode. Showed up again on our Metaverse top 20. Block moved up considerably over the past couple of weeks, especially in sentiment. So I have a feeling we're going to see some action coming from Block itself. And then so much happening, I think, there for sure. James Armstrong, thoughts on Star Atlas? Star Atlas has been one that we've had them on the show before. I still believe that it's a great project. Again, it gets back into those scenarios of biting off more than you're ready for. Now, I'm not saying that that is the case, but when you look at long-term plays on launching games, and I think that's why Axie does so well, is they've been able to incrementally do things with launch of mobile. You get into Origins coming out. You've got the aspect of all the variations from the economy side. There's constantly movement on what's happening with an Axie, and I feel like that for the gaming space, that's what you need probably over anything other than acquisition of players and the economy from a standpoint of support. But you need action from a development side, and you've got to be able to continue to do that. And that's where Star Atlas, I feel, needs to start really doing things like that to help kind of support. Axie, will it reach 90? Easily going to hit 100. Question is when? Love to hear your input on that one, of whether or not we have a running bet here internally that Axie, we have one of our crypto pit guys going for 100 by April, by this weekend. So I don't know. It's close. I don't see it going past 100 that fast. But if we get a fast run on Bitcoin over 50, all bets are off, because at that point, a lot of altcoins, including some of the Metaverse projects, will definitely run for sure. All right, listen, you guys are tuned in over on the podcast right now. Thanks a lot for listening in. But the live is where it's at. You've got to be able to jump in here to the live streams, get in on some of these conversations, ask some questions. And best of all, you get a chance to see all these charts, understand what we're talking about when we get into some of the weeds with around sentiment, amplification, how we track crypto in general, and how we report on it. All of that is done right here on the YouTube channel. Of course, you have to jump into the Diamond Circle if you're new to the show, you're new to our community. We do some things within the Diamond Circle that are special. We give away some rewards. We do a couple of drops on new content, and we do a lot of how-to guides. And then, of course, we share, in some cases, some of our data and CPI information. So that all comes through the Diamond Circle. Just sign up down below. If, of course, you guys want to reach me, it's out on Twitter, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.